Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Biggening Corporation. We are on our 30th episode now. That's a little weird. Today we are going to take a break from sales and purchasing and markets and all that sort of stuff, even though that's the heart of our game. We need players to be charged for the power usage. It is one of the only expenses that the player will have, besides buying items, of course, and other capital expanding. So we need to get that rocking and rolling. So my thinking is that today we'll hit up creating something that ticks along doing the charges for the power usage for locations on top of bots that are already using power, and we need some means by which on a regular basis that the player will have to pay for power to a fictional power company or whatever have you. And then we will also need to take a quick look back to see, I noticed as we were walking through things that sales orders and purchase orders aren't being posted, because after all we have the logistics bots posting the receptions, the receipt of goods, but not the outbound, and I don't think we ever updated the purchasing bots to do that follow-up task under the new framework, and since we're doing that, we're going to copy that over to our sales side. So hopefully that's relatively straightforward, but that will kind of close one of the financial loops that we don't have closed yet. So yeah, that'll be good to have. So if we look at our power usage ledger, right now we have very straightforward bits of data. We have an entry, we have a bot instance, what the type of bot is, whether or not it's been posted, what date, and what the usage was. Okay, that's all cool, but that means that we don't have a structure to say for what location. So we're going to add a new just option field. We don't need it to be an enum, and we'll default it to bot, so all of our existing entries will automatically be tagged as a consumption type bot. Nice thing about options is that option 0, the first one in the list, one of the few times our first option is what we want as a new value for things, that will auto get flagged, all those things, so that'll be fine. Cool. Okay. And then we need to think about what is the mechanism that players how often would a power company charge a player or something like that? It's obviously pretty arbitrary. We could at the end of every game day. We could at the end of every game month. So yeah, I'm not sure I have any strong preferences. We've done everything else by the day, so it would feel like a weird aberration to suddenly do something on a weekly or monthly basis with no real benefit. All we'd be doing then would be accruing power charges that need to be paid down later, and the player would have to kind of keep an eye on that, and I don't think that adds fun to anything, so let's drop anything that doesn't add some fun or a good challenge or whatever have you. So nice and simple. We're going to start easy today on the power ledger. We need to have a new field. So I'm trying to remember to use some shortcuts here. Alright, and this is going to be entry type, and it is an option. I don't need this little comment here. That's fine. And then option members, bot location, and bot location. Simple enough. There we go. Now all of our existing power ledger entries will automatically default to bot, but we at least have the option. And in our power usage ledger, we will stuff this towards the beginning as well. Okay. And I don't know, a cool shortcut I just hit right there, but that's neat. Slammed into the settings all of a sudden. Okay. Alright, that's easy enough. Now, we have the player heartbeat listener thumping along, doing a heartbeat. My thinking is that the power company charges will always hit in the beginning of a day for the previous day. Nice and simple. So let's add a new little code unit that just subscribes to that, and we'll call that good. Nothing complicated. Power posting. Sure. We don't need a source table name for this. That's fine. And again, I'm going to be nice and lazy here, and I'm going to use the events from my workspace, which is our player heartbeat. Another word for lazy is efficient. So, alright, now we've got the event here that we're going to on heartbeat. We will do stuff. And what stuff are we going to do? We are going to, again, just habit on my part, I prefer to throw things into a procedure outside the event so that the actual code inside the event is very small, just a preference thing. Post yesterday power. And we are going to need our power ledger. Helps to do a type, huh? Okay, so now these power charges, they're all coming in here, just to a table with an amount and a posting date, but they're not hitting anywhere else. And what I'm thinking on the way this should work is that we will do this as a journal entry against our power. Nice. We've got entries here for the power bots and power locations. So my thinking is that we will sum up the power charges for all the bots and sum up all the power entries for all the locations that haven't been posted to the GL and do a gen journal post behind the scenes. Nothing too crazy, but I will say that sometimes posting journals automatically in code can be a little it take a little bit of effort to make things make the right amount of sense to get them in a good way. But because these are GL accounts and I'm trying to move towards doing useful things, let's add some new game setup options to our game setup table so that way we can keep track of which GL accounts what power gets charged to. And that's going to be way back in our game setup table up here. And if we go visit our game setup table, there are some GL related things that should probably just be a whole new group, because there are a couple of other to-dos open to point some different GL accounts to things, so we might as well take the time to do this right now. That's fine. I'm not going to chase down those other settings that need to be in here, but we're going to create the new values for this now. I admit I wouldn't mind a snippet that did a decimal, but this is still pretty darn efficient. Let's do field 60. It wants me to use 2, because sure, why not? Power charges. Let's do bot power account. And this is going to be, I believe GL account is code 20. It might be code 10, but I'm pretty sure it's code 20. Just to be thorough and not goof myself up real quick. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. Code 20. Yeah, that's so. Something was tickling in the back of my brain that went, was that one of those special case ones where it's code 10? No, it's code 20. Okay. Simple enough. Bot power account. And this will be a table relation to GL account. We could do some filters on GL account type equals posting. Direct posting is equal to const of true. Because after all, if we can't post to it, that's not going to help us. Okay, cool. And we'll copy this down to 61, and you are now location power account. But otherwise the same. Straightforward and simple. Okay, and now we've got our game setup page, which I was freaking out for a second going, what the heck is going on? It remembered my code folding on the layout. And even though in field numbering it's later in the sections, I think from a product flow, it would make more sense for the general ledger related things to be up top here. So we'll put them up top here. Do I really not have... I don't have captions on a bunch of these things, and that's not the best in the world. There are some pretty useful functions to add a variety of different editor things. And I thought there was one for captions. Probably is. I still very much need to do that extension tour, which might be a this weekend project. It'll be a special live stream that has nothing to do with this project. That'll be weird. Okay, so our field, and we are going to use the one that adds to the page. Cool. And then this is our bot power account and our field page and our location power account. Cool. There we go. So now those are all set, and we can use those in our game setup. Excellent. Now, we need to sum up all of the power ledger entries that are not posted to the GL for each of those two types. And the cool thing about that is we can use just a handy little thing called calcsums bot total. Let's grab it into a variable. It always helps for ease of debugging, really. Function return variables are not always the simplest things to see, so sometimes it helps to just park things in variables in case you plan to debug them. Not always the most code efficient, but that's fine. So power ledger, we will set, first of all, a filter on the posted to GL, false, and we're doing yesterday's entries. So the posting date of calc date are internationalized -1 day, which is those brackets, and we'll use the work date as always. Great. And then power ledger set range on first our entry type of power ledger entry type bot, and now real nice and simple, we can do power ledger calcsums on the amount. I think it's called amount. Double check. Oh, we called it power usage. Okay. Sure. I guess that's the monetary value of the power usage. Sure. Power usage. Now, what's interesting to me, and I'm still a little fuzzy on this myself, calcsums once upon a time used to require a little bit of logic underlying in the way that you set up the keys, but I haven't seen any restrictions on that in a number of versions, so I'm wondering if, because SQL has some great summary things under the hood, that we can now just take advantage of that, because you'll notice I'm not setting any keys here. Once upon a time, if you were going to do calc sums, I'm pretty sure you had to have a key that matched all your filters to get that to calculate correctly, but not these days. So bot total is going to equal, we just do calc sums as a call first, and then in the Power Ledger current state. Now, what's funky about calc sums is you'll notice I set a batch of filters, and as I often talk about, you do your filter, you do your motion, you do your action, you do your changes basically, and then you do your write. You'll notice that calc sums, there is no motion. It programmatically is setting the value of the fields that you're calculating on without you having to move to a record. And that's important to note too from an action and write perspective. We would have some weird results if we called a modify after this because we're not on a record. And if we were on a record and then we did calc sums and a modify, we would again get some pretty weird results. So yeah, something to be aware of. Now we can just, nice and simple, take that, location, and location total. So now we've got our totals of what do we need to post. Nice and simple. And honestly, just in case something terribly goes wrong, rather than filter to specifically only post yesterday entries, I would rather do a set filter on everything up to and including yesterday. That way, if the player's job queue breaks for some reason or other, they don't get rewarded by, having a few days of free power and that sort of thing. So that seems reasonable. Okie doke. Perfect. So now we need to figure out our good friend Gen Journals. Now, in our player company, I'm guessing the system probably just generated that default batch the second I opened it. It probably didn't even exist before I opened it. There's a lot of self-initializing code around that, so that way people can kind of get things automatically. So if we were to do this manually, we would have the posting date of today's work date. We probably would leave document type blank. Document number is required, so we'll have to think about that, which I'm inclined to just say power and then do some sort of date string like that, just ta-da. And then we would do a GL account charge against our power bots for whatever amount. I don't think we'll need a business or posting group. We'll try it out without it. Let's see. So let's say we did 100 units, and then we would balance that against the cash account. Deduct it from the player's cash because we're not using bank accounts, so that's perfectly fine. The only thing I'm not 100% sure of, and this is where my lack of accounting background does come into play, is just sanity checking that makes sense as far as, yeah, okay. Just making sure the signage makes sense, so the positive goes against the expenses and the negative goes against the cash. Yeah, I think that's right. Seems reasonable. Okay. I am not a wizard of debit and credits. So let's post this in 1 second and see that it actually is correct looking. But if we inspect, now I will admit it was a lot easier in pre-Business Central versions. When you look at this journal entry, I would fill out journals to be what I need them to be, and then in the classic development environment, copy this journal line with headers off to Excel to review all of the things that happened automatically as part of being on the page. So as we can see here, there are fields that are on here that we don't see, that we would never see, that automatically got filled in. For example, just opening this as a gen journal, set the template as general. We got a line number automatically. There are lots of other fields that got filled in automatically. And then there are some that are filled in from the page, like the source code. So there's a lot of, and here's the journal batch name. So there are a lot of fields that get filled in automatically from being in the page, because there is a fair bit of code logic in this gen journal. So we'll see what we can get away with. Yeah. Okay. We'll see. Let's double check to make sure this posts. We can these days do preview posting, which is always nice as a process. Once upon a time, there used to be a test report. That's better. I like the test report system. It generally gives you a lot of details about what potential errors you're going to run into. Cool. That makes perfect sense. Okay. Yeah, that all seems fine. So if this posts, then we know that that's probably about what we need to do. Good. Usually you won't need to do too much where you're charging things through the gen journal programmatically, usually. So, yep. Revenue is negative, cost positive, all is right in the rain. Alright. Cool. Alright. So that's good. So what we need is our gen journal, which is just the general journal line. We are going to see how little we can get away with populating and still successfully post. A lot of the system, if you haven't crawled through the posting code units, go through journal lines, whether you realize it or not. Even when you're creating documents like sales orders, purchase orders, when you hit post on those things, there is absolutely a whole lot of general journal lines that get created and posted behind the scenes as part of that flow. Documents is a layer sitting on top of journals. So, something to be aware of. Okay. And in this case, I think we just want post line. Now, for production use and production customers, there would be a whole lot more things that we would be doing. For example, when we're posting things automatically in the background, we would want to have good error handling. We potentially want to have a system by which we can notify users of posting, blah, blah, blah. Lots and lots of stuff. But we can skip a lot of that for what we're doing, because if any accountant is trying to look over these books, I hope it's only because they're a player. They're never going to be accurate to anyone's generally accepted accounting principles, so that's fine. Okay, so we've got our gen journal, and yep, okay, just making sure that I pulled the right thing. All right. We know that we are going to need to post a couple of different things. So let's start with if bot total does not equal 0, then begin. Because after all, we only need to do this if we're posting. Now we're going to be posting the same exact sort of thing twice, so in fact I am going to move the do post line, and let's do which account. Actually, let's do charge account is the name on this, and we also do charge amount decimal. We'll obviously need some bar situation. One of the things we didn't add to game setup that we really should, because we're going to make use of it for a few different places, is we should have the cache account. That'll be our offset account for a few different things. So probably still going to have 2 or 3 more account setup places in here, but that's fine. So cache account, because we should make sure to pull that setting for our offset for this entry. That's fine. Excellent. Okie doke, which means we can take our let's grab gen journal line game setup, pop those down here. We actually do need game setup in both places, so let's keep that. And we'll grab our gen journal post and move that on down into this function too. After records, CodeCop is picky about the order of things, but as mentioned in previous episodes, I do not have CodeCop turned on. I was working on a project earlier today where I had it was developed in BC 13 before we started using CodeCop. It was one of the earlier extensions for a particular customer, and they're upgrading to 16. We turned on CodeCop, 400 errors. Like, oh, good. So much of it just renaming objects, which, let me tell you, if you are using GitHub to track your changes, that's annoying. Super annoying. Alright, so, if we're going to use game setup in both places, we know we're going to get it, we know we're going to make use of it twice, let's go global. That way we can do a single game setup.get call here in the beginning of this, and now when we're down in here, we know that that's already been initialized. And in the test near, test far sort of thinking, let's do a test field on cache account, and I think we have to do them all as individual lines, but test field on the bot power account, and because after all, if those aren't filled in, something has gone terribly wrong. Okay. Alright, cool. So now we can say instead of then begin, we can do a simple do post line and game setup dot bot power account and our bot total charges. And if the location total does not equal 0, then we can grab our location total. There we go. Alright, so if bot total doesn't equal 0, post it. If location total, post it. Yep. We are not throwing any events out of this. It's something to think about a little bit later on. We may eventually introduce some researches that reduce the power cost charge to the player as sort of like maybe a nice way that they could pour some research into eventually getting some reduced costs. Maybe. And for that we should let's do that real quick. It's such a small thing to just throw a before charge the power. So event, we'll do business real quick. Just what the heck, I forget. I honestly forget the logic behind it on our publishing events. Which one? Business and integration. Their promise levels to people who use those events. Event types. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Cool. Alright, so business events could almost be considered contract events. When you create that, you're kind of saying, look, I'm not going to change this. It's going to be forward compatible. You can build on this and rely on it. So a concrete or contract event might be a better parlance on that, but that's all right. And then integration event is just to hey, I'm being friendly here and exposing stuff. You can't rely on it. I'm gonna go with business events. That's super fine. We don't need to include the procedure. Let's see. On before charge power, and what we are going to. Let's see. We need to throw what type it is, whether it's bot or location, and we need to throw the amount. I'm thinking that seems like a sufficient amount of info to give, as well as an is handled wrapper on that. So, charge type option, which I think. I'm trying to remember the parlance of how we do an option declaration in a function call, because that I'm a little fuzzy on. Option bot location. I have seen it recently, so I'm trying to remember what exactly the logic was. There was a way where you could declare the option members, but I don't remember what it was. Shoot. I feel bad when I have to Google things while I'm coding, but occasionally I hit my I don't remember. Option type parameter. Sure. This is way too old, but I appreciate the offering of that. Really, just a space. Okay. I admit I don't think I tried that, and no quotes around it or anything, huh? Wacky. Okay. Charge amount, and this should absolutely be a var. What amount are we charging? And that'll be a decimal. And then finally, last but not least, a var is handled, which will be a boolean. And that way someone could theoretically choose to override charges. So, yep, that requires us to bump these up to begin ends without making code cop upset about simple calls. So here we just call on before charge power, and we say we can do entry type, because our entry type is the same as this charge type. We can then say bot total, which is a variable, which is one of the reasons I parked that amount in the variable, was for potential event call use. And then we need a new boolean called is handled. Alright, and because we're making it is handled and we expect it to be false, we can nice and simple just define it up here, and we don't even need to assign anything to it. If not is handled, then do post line. So theoretically, this gives someone the freedom to override our posting logic. which is always a nice thing to do. Please, people who are writing events, do lots of is handled logic. Please, 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 please. Okay. Cool. Alrighty. So our gen journal, we are going to simple enough. I believe if we go back here to our gen journal, and we look at our inspect on this again, I think it generated all of the default settings, which is journal template name general, batch name default. I'm going to try coding against that and see where it gets me. It might not work because I'm not checking to see if those values exist. So we'll see if that works out okay for me. It might not. I think technically during the posting process it doesn't validate these things. So okay, so now yeah, you don't stringify that int, but thank you. We're going to only create the single line in this function call and then post it, so we can just straight up assign the line number to anything. Could just be 0, it doesn't really matter. So the gen okay, posting account. There we go. Account type. Been a while since I've done any of gen journal entry making. Usually these days that's all via config packages and things like that. So our account number is going to be the charge account. But I'm starting to do assignments when down here in this particularly, I really need to validate this one. And as mentioned, I think I will, for document number sake, power doc number token will be a label power %1. That seems just fine. And what we'll do is gen journal.validate the document number will be string subs number on our power document number. And the way I was envisioning this is just doing the posting date tagged onto the end of that, but what we will do is we will borrow the format command. Where are you? Format property. So there is a spiffy little format for date time that works pretty good, and we can simply make use of this XML format here where it does year, month, date in descending order, and the dashes will be just fine. That makes it also well within our document number 20 character, and it's going to be relatively unique per day. So we can just use this format 9. And to do that, we do format the work date. And I believe the second parameter is the maximum amount of data to display. Yep, length. And for that, if you say 0, it will return the entire value, which is what we want. And we want format string 9. So, I don't think we have to say standard display format 9. Yeah, we should. It'll, even if we don't have to, it's sure as heck is clearer. So, standard format 9. Okay. Power doc token, and I think I'm just missing some parens. No, I'm not missing any parentheses. I think I've just confused the compiler here. Yep. As soon as I saved and it revalidated, it went right through. Okay. So there we go. It'll be power-2028-07- blah 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 blah. Nice and simple there. And validate the posting date to work date. And we want to validate the balancing account type as our journal line dot balancing account type GL as well. And we want, at this point I've just switched over to validating all the fields because I honestly don't know all the validations. Go figure, I haven't memorized them. So we will balance that against the cash account for the players. And finally, we will validate the amount to be the charge amount. Insert. I don't think we have to insert. I think you can just pass a created GenJournal line into the GenJournal post and it'll deal just fine. Little unsure about that, to be fair. So run. Yeah. There are ways you can run it with and without checks, and I'm debating on if there were value to that, but okay, so there we go. That should be that. Now, for sanity's sake, this is going to be listening and posting and everything like that. So if we save everything and publish, which will take just a moment, theoretically, we can go into our Player 5 company, take up the game date, and see all of the old charges get posted as a couple of big honking, well, one, because we haven't created location power yet. All the bot charges should go right on through as a big giant posting batch. We'll see. We could separately end up with an error message somewhere. Who knows? Okay. Alright, and we'll go to our game setup, and we'll use our spiffy new little button to tick the day. Hopefully that does its job, and we'll make sure the job queue in our player environment is healthy, which it's not at the moment. That's fine. That will happen a lot for a while, so that's why I now always just check. It's safer. We also have not done something that is important. Some of you astute watchers might have noticed it already and considered the implications already. I have specifically not done it yet, and you'll see what hopefully in a moment. So if we go to our chart of accounts, do we see some power charges? Not so far. That isn't the intentional fail. Okay. If we go to our gen journals, do we see anything in here? Well, we do see the entry got created. Or an entry got created. Let's go look at our GL registers. Oh, okay. I might have just looked too quickly. Let's navigate on this register and take a look at all the GL entries it made. Was that the one I did manually? Because it seems awfully coincidental that it would be precisely the 100 amount. I suspect that, yeah, that had to have been, because this is one of the few places in the system where by default you'll see a timestamp in there. In case you didn't ever know that, there are very few places where you can tell what time of day someone posted something, but the GL register will give you that info. So if you're trying to figure out who the heck moved this out of inventory, this is one of the only places where you can find out who and precisely when. But that does show us that, I wrote another brilliant function with 0 references. Yeah. Okay, well, since we're here, and now I will tell you about what I intentionally left out and was going to show an example of failing. You'll notice that we calculate all these things based on the fact that it has been posted to the GL false, but we don't do anything to note that now it has been posted to the GL. So this rolling amount was going to get posted over and over and over again. So how do we deal with that? We're going to return a boolean from this post line because this gen journal post returns a boolean, and we can just return that, and that'll let this code up here know that that worked. So for our bots, what we will do is we will set the range on this back to the bot type, because here we had changed the entry type, and now we can, real simple and easy, do this delightful modify all post to the GL true. And it's a good idea to watch out for the fact that up here we're doing a set range post to GL false, and then we modify all true. I have once in a while seen some kind of flaky weird results on that. So we'll see if that behaves and does what we need to do, but something to be aware of, we are doing a modify all on the very thing we're filtering on. I'm going to leave the code in place on just the bot side to do the modify all after, because we aren't charging location wise for power yet. So let's get that sorted out without debugging, please. Thank you. And on the location charge side, this is going to be a tiny little quick bit of code, because we're just needing to add a couple of game setup variables again around locations, and a bit of code to charge on a daily for it. So, game setup. I'm surprised, honestly, it hasn't blown up at me to say, hey, you've the table definition changed, man. Okay, GL reg. That's the document version. It's not going to get me where I want to go. Register. Huh. Interesting. Okay, now I'm going a little nuts here. We just looked at the GL register before. It's hiding under archive. Ugh. Okay, so there's our 722 posting from earlier, but there are so far are no other postings. Did we break the job queue? We broke the job queue. Ready. And hopefully that'll take over in just a moment. I'm really looking forward to getting through some of these core mechanics, because there's so much bells and whistles that I'm trying to get us to. It's going to be all sorts of fun to finally be at a point where we can start doing these crazy things like the APIs and custom Java controls and Power BI embeds and optimizing for mobile and all that fun stuff. Alright. Let's see, 750. Come on, tick on over. I'm being impatient. Alright, well, while we're waiting for that, maybe we should do something else real quick, because it's very silly for any of us to use this time. Okay, in process. Ooh, error. What's our error, my friend? Cache account must have value. Ah, yeah. Well, we know our test field worked. Cache, we need a bot power account. And 6,200 for you. Cool. That's perfectly fair and legitimate. Thank you for complaining, job queue. Alright. Hopefully our job queue runs pretty quick second time around. I guess hooray for unintentional testing. Cool. So my thinking while we're waiting for that to take over is on the power charges for locations. We are simply going to add a basic power per day and an advanced power per day. And that will be a base amount that is charged for each of those things, because there should be some overhead cost for operating lots of locations. Since the game is going to be very much geared around, you want to build up stock for different things till the price hits a point and then you sell it. There needs to be some potential inhibiting factor preventing discouraging a person from having 10,000 locations with every item in it, theoretically. I mean, I suppose. Cool. Okay. That job queue should have ticked over, but I don't know what happened with it. Oh no. Okay. We may need to take a slightly different approach at testing it rather than just kicking the tires and waiting, because here's a whole lot of posted to GL no, and they definitely were before current, so we should have ended up with a pretty sizable power bill for this particular player's environment. Okay, so yeah, let's do this. We know it got this far, so probably something else has gone wrong in the flow of things, and the way we can quick and easy do this for now, just for testing purposes, is on our power usage ledger we will add an actions section where we will add an area for processing, where we'll add an action, post. Okay, I don't know what snippet I just typed, but that was cool. Oh, neat. Okay. Properties action. I appreciate it thinking POST was enough for that. Alright. So our properties action. Cool. Our prop. Bam. Ah, that's good. I like that. Alright. And we have an image for just post, so we'll just use that. And the trigger on this will be nice and simple. On action bar, we need our power post, which is a code unit. BCS power posting. And this is why we have this as a procedure. Power post dot do post yesterday power. There we go. Now we can start publish with debugging and look at what actually happened. And I already set a breakpoint after we tested field because we knew all that was working. So now we can publish with debugging. There are lots of shortcut keys I could be hitting besides opening the command palette. There are buttons on screen I can be hitting. It's all very stylistic to what your preference is for using things. Don't feel you have to do it the same way. I have so many extensions installed. I don't know all of the shortcut keys that have been kind of fiddled with and hijacked because I do development and things besides Business Central, so every once in a while commands that I was expecting to do one thing will do something else, but I know when I select it from the command palette it's doing what I want. So if you're ever curious as to why I keep going up to that, that's the story on that. Okay, so now we've got a post. We're in the master company. Settings. One of the things to be aware of is that there is a little variable in UR when you start with debugging that is this debugging context. You can just hijack that over to another browser session, I believe. There are also ways that you can attach to an existing session for debugging. Not going to go into it right now, but it's out there. The debugging will continue to operate even when we switch companies. That's fine. Okay, so now we've got a ton of stuff, and when I hit post, it will look like it's frozen because it's waiting for me to respond over here in my environment to do posting. So, it is blowing up. It's telling me, for starters, it's not possible to do breakpoints where I want, but I believe we are in fact getting an error on this gen journal where it's trying to do the insert and it's trying to get the journal template name. If we look over in our debug locals, we have gen journal, journal template name general batch name batch. Yeah, batch doesn't exist, so this get is correctly vomiting on this one. Okay, alright. Yep, so let's just fix our posting code here. You probably saw me doing it going, no, don't do it, you're gonna blow yourself up. I did. Didn't mean to do it. I still don't know for sure if that is actually safe to count on and rely on in other environments, because a lot of times those are generated when you open up the page. So it's possible, for example, that in the test episode 25 company, that particular journal batch might not exist yet, but if I were to open up the gen journal page, it would probably create it for me, so it's brilliant. Okay, I have the debugger shut off now, and I am going to manually hit post and see what happens. Gen journal already exists. Okay. Alright. Why is that? I don't know if that's on the first one or because I've left something open. It can be hard to tell with these delayed insert pages if something is already inserted. Used to be that it was clear that something existed or not. Pardon? Okay, something is trying to pop up at us, but we are using code unit run. Oh, no, I know what's up. Okay, I'm using the return value from the code unit here after I've called an insert. That's forbidden unless you've done a commit. So no harm, no foul to me if I commit this entry. It'll be gone after this post runs, or it'll be sitting open when we're done and something errors out. You cannot go into an if run, which is how I'm handling this, with open transaction. It's part of that rollback thing. If you're at all confused by what I'm babbling about there, then you'll probably need to go back to an episode I did about making the bot dispatcher and handling write transactions inside of code unit calls where you are accepting the return value. Ironically, if I was just calling genjournalpost.run with no exit, then it would have worked just fine, probably. No guarantees, but probably. Bam! Posted a GL. Okay, that was quick. Alright, well, let's go see how big of a charge hit the chart of accounts for this company. And that'll be a decent place to actually end the episode. I'm going to do the same workflow for locations at some point. 66,000. Even? No, 66,060. Okay, cool. And there's our funky little date formatted thing based on the game date. It's a little redundant info, but I wanted to have some unique document number, so that way we can do the navigate on this entry. If any Microsoft people are watching, y'all have got to do something about the fact that actions navigate and navigate. Come on, man. Entry navigate. Navigate. Come on. Alright, well, we are charging the players for power. We need to, let's see here. We have a little thing ticking along where is this hanging out here? There is something ticking along creating the bot power consumption. I think that's the bot. Here it is. Yep, this little bot power usage management. All of this is doing is going through the bot instances and creating a little entries. And you'll notice that this doesn't even choke at all on the fact that we added a new type to this table, the entry type, because in this case entry type bot is the default, so we're fine there. So I will need to, much like I have this tiny little code unit doing bot power management, I will need one down in the player company that is location power management. And the power usage, instead of coming from the bot instance get power per day, will be coming from a new game setup set of fields like we had talked about briefly earlier there, where I will set up a basic location power and advanced location power. And that will drive creating the location charges, and we will only need to update this little workflow to match. Location. Alright. So, yeah. Cool. We just need a little tiny code unit and a couple more fields, and we will have locations charging for power as well. And that's gotten us through at least through the primary goals of today. So that's pretty good. Not too bad for an hour. Alright, well, fantastic. I guess tomorrow we will do sales order and purchase order posting, because I do need that crossed off on the list. Because right now in our player company, if we go look at our purchase orders, we will see that there's a lot of open released orders just sitting out here. Yeah, all these released ones have already been fully received and are just sitting here waiting to be posted. So we need to have the system make sure to tidy up after itself. I think we have about like 2,000 or 3,000 of them from one of the test runs we had earlier. before we had location stock caps in place. So a real long run of stuff. And that won't be too crazy, and I think we'll be alright. That seems like a good place to wrap up, and our next place after that will be revisiting bot purchasing. Just to kind of update that workflow, to update some of the tier-based logic around all those, maybe kind of clean up some of the mechanics around seeing which different bots are in there, and then we're in pretty good shape to do some test drives over the course of the following week. We'll set up a couple of new companies and pit them against each other virtually. So if folks are watching along and you want to participate in the first little test run, let me know. Just hit me up on Twitter, and we'll we'll get you in remotely as one of the first little test companies. I won't quite call it an alpha yet, but always fun to put it in the hands of someone. So, all right. Well, thank you all for watching, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We're getting closer. Take care, everybody.